Winning cures everything. Now for your hosts, Gary and Chris.
Welcome in, Winning Cures Everything. It is Friday, January the 8th. I'm Gary.
And I'm Chris.
And college football heavy show today. Lots of bits of news and whatnot. It's not going to be a long show, but hopefully you guys are still tuning in. By the numbers, it looks like it. So we certainly appreciate you for doing that. If you would like to join the show live, if you're listening on the podcast, of course, the show Monday, Wednesday, Friday at certain points in the afternoon, whenever that might be. McKinnon jumps in already. Happy Friday, boys. He's on Facebook. You can watch the show Monday, Wednesday, Friday live. You can be a part of the conversation on Periscope, Twitch. Periscope's going to be gone by April, so I guess it's just Twitter.
It'll just be Twitter.
But Periscope, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. Those are the 4 locations. Of course, you can always catch the show on the podcast later. Michael Fritz jumps in on Twitch. So we have 2 different platforms already that have popped up into the chat feed. If you would like to chat, of course, whatever platform you are on, it will populate right there in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, and that is our little chat box there where you can talk to each other. Auburn basketball fiend, hashtag free Sharif, jumps in and says, yo. Well, yo, what is happening? So, yeah, we've got Periscope, Facebook, and Twitch already. Now we're just waiting on somebody from YouTube. That's the way it goes. WinningCuresEverything.com is the website, of course. That's where you can find everything you need to know about us, everywhere you need to subscribe, everything else like that, where you can follow us on social media, whatever. If you are watching the show live, obviously you already see all of that as well. And our college football gambling content is up at sbrpicks.com/NCAAF. We have articles over there for the national championship game. We have a video preview where we break down the national championship game. And after that, there's going to be a lot more to discuss because there is no offseason in college football. So we will still be over there doing our thing. So you can join in there on YouTube. Just search out SBR Picks or, like I said, go over to sbrpicks.com/NCAAF. Chris, we have not talked at all today. So we've got a slew of subjects that aren't like massive things. The Yeti jumps in. There we go. And Obi Matt. So we have our YouTube. We have the full quadfecta. Is that the word for it?
Sure.
All 4 of them. KCK, Desmond Ridder should have been the second quarterback taken in this draft. Okay, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. No worries. But there is a lot of college football news. Let's go ahead and start it off with Michigan extending Jim Harbaugh. And the interesting thing about this is the fact that he took a 5-year extension that pays him $4 million a year guaranteed. That is down from the 8 or 7.5, whatever it was. I mean, it basically cut it in half and told him he's got to earn his money. I absolutely love this. Like, not for him, obviously, but
for him, it's fair. It's fair. They grossly overpaid him to get him to leave the NFL and come to college.
Agreed.
And now they are giving him an earn it contract. But this is also good for him too, in the sense of if an NFL job comes open, the buyout isn't as bad because his salary isn't as big.
Agreed.
So the buyout is always somewhere on a scale equivalent to the salary of what that coach is making. Had some NFL team tried to steal him 3 years ago, it would have cost that NFL team a fortune, and now it just won't.
No, you are 100% right. Matt jumps in. He said, who was Michigan going to get that was better than him? Well, here's and that's a valid point, right?
Because the answer to that is nobody,
right,
by the way.
Right. Now, you can talk about college football coaches that have done better over the last however many years than he has. The issue at Michigan is Michigan itself. The administration is the problem.
They ain't done it there. Okay.
Look, they had a chance to get out from under a coach that is not winning. They had that opportunity because his contract was done after next season. The buyout is nothing right now.
Yep.
And instead of doing that, we see what Texas did. Texas had a perfectly reasonable head coach that was, 32-18, but looked like things were moving somewhat in the right direction. Maybe, we guess, it's the first year under new coordinators. Like, who knows, right? But Texas wasn't bad. Like, Texas paid $24 million to get rid of this guy because they expect championships. They expect to be on a higher level than what they are. Michigan, on the other hand, just paid a guy to come back that has not finished any better than, third in the division in his entire tenure. And it's, 5 years, 6 years at this point? That's the difference.
They didn't finish better than Penn State any of those years?
I don't. Maybe that first year or the second.
The year where the Michigan State block punt for a touchdown kept them out of the, I think the Big 12 title game that year or something.
The Big Ten championship game, the closest that they got was the late call on, what was the quarterback at that point? It wasn't Troy Smith. Who was it? JT Barrett. When JT Barrett ran it and he got the first down on fourth down by inches.
That's right.
That's the closest that they got. But even then,
but that's the same year as the block punt for Michigan State.
Right. And Michigan State tied them in the race. So they were technically third. So is what it is, right?
They tied for third.
Yeah. Yeah. Tied for third. And that's the thing. They have not finished better than third in that division. Regardless, the standings don't matter. They've had pretty good seasons under Harbaugh. Yep. They've had some less than stellar, of course, this year being one of them. But so McKinnon here, Michigan, I think, is really understanding that their years of being an actual powerhouse in football is over because of their academic stance on athletes. It's not just the academic stance. They can allow in whoever they want to. It is the people that run the university don't care about football.
Well, but that's part of the academic stance, though, Gary.
Yes, no. Yes, that's 100% right.
I mean, it's non-football people messing up the football.
Yes, 100%. Like they could let in whoever they want to for football only. That's what Duke does for basketball, right?
That's right.
They could do that.
That's right. Almost zero of those basketball players would make it into Duke if they weren't basketball players.
They also do not put as much funding into the football program as their counterparts, Ohio State. That rivalry is dead. We've talked about it numerous times. One school cares about football, the other doesn't. And this is even more proof that Michigan, who had the opportunity to go out and try something different, opted instead to keep a coach that has not proven that he has what it takes to turn that program around, but it's because they know that they aren't worried about turning the program around, right?
Yeah. He hasn't turned it around because he's not Magic. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Matt said, he said, weren't people complaining at one point that if Michigan and Ohio State were in separate divisions, that the Big Ten championship game was going to be those two every year?
Yes.
I mean, it's comical when you think about it, but yeah. So Michigan, of course, extends him, and I think that this is the beginning of a much bigger deal, maybe a coming of age of coaches' contracts.
Now, I also wondered, does this going to help them get better coordinators as well? Because now, hey, you're not paying me $8 million. You know, maybe we can get up in the $2 million range for assistant coaches.
Possibly. It depends on how much they want to spend. I mean, we just saw Marshall get rid of a, pretty good coach because they didn't want to spend the money. And I wonder if Michigan's
not Marshall. Michigan's not Marshall, though.
They're not.
Michigan doesn't put the money in. Ohio State does, and Wisconsin does, but they're not Marshall.
That is true. Now, there are incentives in this contract. It's $4 million a year for 5 years, guaranteed, right? But there are incentives that could get him to make as much as $8 million a year if he reaches those incentives. And I think that's the perfect way to go about it. Coaches' contracts.
That's the way I would build every contract, by the way.
Yes, if you're an AD, that's how you need to do it. Now, you may not get the best guys right now.
No. I would laden it with a lot of realistic incentives. I'm not saying you got to win a national championship and you get $4 million, and if you don't, then you're just getting the $4 that we already paid you. Like I would make it a stepping stones type of thing.
Yes, I agree. I mean, it's just I loved seeing it because it gave me a little more hope into people actually earning their contracts. Yes. And it kind of leads us into the next topic that I wanted to discuss, which is the investigation that is going on at the University of Tennessee, where they are trying to figure out, and it is the worst kept secret at that university, right? Brown Yeti jumps in. The Big Ten, where former powerhouses go to die, and they're fed to Ohio State, Michigan, and Nebraska, to be specific. Yeah, it's something like that. I mean, we can talk all we want to about when all of the industry jobs were taken out of Michigan and out of the Midwest and all that, and all those people then kind of migrated to the South, and that's when the shift began. But, the shift began years after that, but you get the point.
There's the money left town, and therefore the schools take
they suffered
10 years to reflect the income of money.
You got it.
There's a delay there, but yes.
All right, so back to this. The Tennessee football investigation into Jeremy Pruitt and the idea that there could be some wrongdoing, et cetera, et cetera. Dan Patrick talked about it this morning, that there is going to be a serious investigation into this. This is not brought on by the NCAA. This was brought on by the school and the compliance office themselves, which lets you know, and it's the worst-kept secret in the world, it lets you know that Tennessee wants to get out from under the Jeremy Pruitt contract. If they were to fire him today, the buyout would be, $12.5 million, somewhere around there. The issue with that, because that doesn't sound like that much in the grand scheme of things when you look at what Texas paid and what Auburn paid, et cetera, right? The issue is Tennessee is still paying dudes. They still have guys that they were paying from before. Like, they just got done paying Butch Jones, but they're still just contracts. They're still knee-deep financially, and they don't want to have to pay somebody if they don't have to, but they also understand that their football program is in a bad, bad way right now. I am curious about this because Kansas tried to do the same thing with David Beatty, and they still had to pay him a settlement. It wasn't nearly what they owed him, but they had to pay him a settlement. You have to wonder, because they went ahead and it was announced this morning, I believe, that Tennessee has put a hiring freeze, or it might have been last night. They put a hiring freeze on Tennessee's open position coach jobs. And
they're not letting Pruitt hire that job.
And they are also not reinstating the contracts of the assistant coaches as of right now.
That's right.
Which is also kind of crazy. And if there are open jobs elsewhere, you know that those guys are going to be jumping at them.
That's right.
This is a weird time for Tennessee to be firing a coach. Like, I think I got to tell you, what Kansas did was probably the smart way to go about it. If you think that there were NCAA violations, you go ahead and fire him. Just go ahead and fire him, because this is not a contract set up like Gus Malzahn's where you owed him half of it within 30 days. Like, it's not like that. In this situation, you fire him, and you pay, the month-to-month buyout as you go on, and then figure out, okay, now we don't owe you anything else because of this NCAA stuff if you find it, right? Like, they have to believe that there's something there. Otherwise, they wouldn't do this, right?
Yeah, I got to think so. My other question is this. If Pruitt finds a better opportunity and he didn't want to deal with this, can he just walk away?
So there is a buyout on his end as well.
I'm sure there's a buyout on his end. Well, I bet that buyout's huge because he just re-upped for an extension this past August.
Ben LaFlamme jumps in. I heard Georgia might also be investigated. Also very surprising. He jumped in earlier. Let me see if I can find it. But Ben said, wow, I'm so surprised that Tennessee's paying their players through the back door. Wow, how surprising. Look, every SEC team is doing this. This is not surprising. And he obviously gets that. He put the little eye roll emoji and whatnot. But look, all the SEC teams are doing this. The issue is that the school is actually investigating themselves. That's what makes this goofy. If Pruitt had gone 7-3 this year instead of 3-7, there would be no investigation. They wouldn't even be talking about it. Phil Fulmer and the chancellor over there, which they have a new chancellor like every other year, it feels like, at Tennessee. But if they were 7-3 or even 6-4, if they looked like they were progressing in the correct direction, this would not be an investigation. They would have swept this under the rug. All those guys would have said, hey, sit over there in that compliance office and keep your mouth shut. I don't need to hear about this. And things would have gone on as normal.
That's right.
Like, the stuff like they were talking about at Georgia, like Dan Patrick, he was kind of wrong on a lot of that Big Ten stuff. I believe the guys that are in Knoxville more so than Dan Patrick. That's not to say anything bad about Dan Patrick. But if the first thing that I'm hearing about an investigation into Georgia recruiting is from Dan Patrick, I'm going to be wary of that. So you kind of feel the same way on it?
I don't know, man. No, I don't. I think there's a lot of reporters in the SEC that work for these schools that carry the water I think a lot of college journalists do a pretty bad job. Not all of them, obviously, but I do think there's a lot of them that will carry the water for the school.
Agreed.
And Georgia is one of those schools that's big enough to where Alabama never gets bad press, and none of this stuff ever comes up on them. And there's a reason for that. People are highly compensated to keep their mouth shut.
That's you might be right about that.
I think Georgia's ran very similarly. Tennessee has its own problems. They would be foolish to waste funds on trying to keep the media out. They don't have a media problem. They got a coaching and an athletic department problem.
This is true. Your last
they
crap,
gotta fix that.
That's
the difference.
Oh yeah, no, that's 100% the difference. What's up, Chris and Gary? Can never get enough of y'all. That's always nice to hear. Let's see. McKinnon says, to be fair, I'm quite certain Ohio State has more money than God. After going there for our NCAA championship in shooting, I can honestly say they have the nicest and biggest campus with the best facilities I've ever seen in college. That's talking about the Michigan stuff. Yes. Ohio State's got so much money. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And they put it in their athletic department because they understand that that's the front porch of the university. That's what draws people in. Matt said, I was surprised Bama was not upping their payroll to get a kicker years ago. Then he said the SEC does not have a salary cap. Hey, Stephen Gardner jumps in. Chris with the fresh shave. He said, go Brady. It does look good. It's like this nice, shiny. I'm in with it. Michael Fritch, every team has violations. The NCAA just picks and chooses who they want to make an example of. This is 100% true. Let's talk for a second about the College Football Awards show, and I have a question for you. Okay. So this year, Alabama won 8 awards, and it's becoming a common occurrence because the best offense in college football, so long as they are in the playoff, it feels like it's going to have something like this happen every year. LSU last year had 7. They won the Maxwell Award, the Walter Camp, the Coach of the Year, the best defensive back, the best quarterback, the best offensive line, the best wide receiver, That was and the best assistant coach. That was LSU last season. Alabama won a lot of the same things this year. Best assistant coach, best interior lineman, best center, best quarterback, blah, 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 blah. Jamie Chadwell, our boy from Coastal Carolina, got the Coach of the Year award. Props to that, of course.
He deserved it.
Yes,
well deserved.
Yes, he did. So my question is, I'm almost curious, what is the purpose of even doing this stuff if we're just going to give it to the top-ranked team with the best offense every year? I know that these kids deserve accolades. I don't think it's going to be. I think we had this 2 years in a row. I don't think we're going to see this regularly. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, I'm an Alabama fan, so I'm in on thinking that these guys are great.
The only award that I don't agree with that Alabama got was the Broyles Award. So I think all the rest of them are warranted. And if you've earned it, then you get it. But I don't think that's going to be the case year in and year out. I just don't.
I hope not. I hope not. Because if it becomes this
year, the Broyles Award was a joke. I mean, nobody in the world thinks that Steve Sarkisian is magic because of this amount of talent. Okay.
Yeah.
He just, it was just a gluttony of talent, and it should have went. It should have went to the defensive coordinator at Northwestern. We're biased, but that's the truth though. Also, there's not another assistant coach in the country that did what that man did with the talent they have.
Yeah, I'm with you. Casey jumps in. If Grayson McCall would transfer and go to Kentucky, they would be a playoff contender next year.
Casey's always just slinging just crazy stuff.
These crazy hot takes. Kentucky, a playoff contender with a different quarterback.
That's insane.
I mean, what are we talking about? Brown Yeti said, "You're saying that journalistic integrity is no longer a thing?"
It is not. It is not.
What? Let's see. Kit Falbo said it's not like most voters have time to do in-depth research either way. Talking about the voters for these awards. I will say this. I voted in 4 of the awards because I'm an FWAA member. And, I went through and did my research. I didn't vote for all Alabama dudes. I didn't vote for, best center, best quarterback, whatever. The guy that I voted for the Nagurski Trophy was Zaven Collins from Tulsa, and he ended up winning. The best interior lineman, I had the kid from Coastal Carolina. I mean, the the guy from BYU, the best defensive lineman was the what's the guy's name now? But the guy from BYU is the one that I had as best offensive lineman. Yeah. It just felt like there's not enough G5 players that are represented in these awards, and it just feels like it's the same thing every year. And
this was the year that they should have been able to get some of that spotlight. But at the end of the day,
I'm with you. I know where you're coming from. I know where you're going with it, and I
think it was acceptable. I think,
I
don't think we're gonna what we saw from LSU last year and what we saw from Bama this year just happened to be back-to-back years. But every now and then there is a special team that is all-time great.
Yeah,
and we just happen to have two of them back-to-back. I'll be shocked if we see this next year. I'll just be shocked.
Oh, I'm with you. Because we don't have a lot of starting quarterbacks and starting running, but all that kind of stuff coming back next year. Oklahoma might be the closest thing because they are so young. McKinnon jumped in. Our boy Brady White got that hardware. Yeah, they got the academic Heisman, which is the William V. Campbell Trophy. So Brady White from Memphis got that in his 7th season of playing. So he's just been there forever. Obi Matt said the media needs to quit being the only vote on these awards. They just give it to popular teams and players. Yeah, that's kind of that's where I'm going with this. It's just
I do think that's a little bit of an issue, but I don't know who you've opened the rest of it up to. You can't let fans vote for this stuff because fans are morons. Well, we just are. We're irrational.
That's even more giving it to the popular people, right?
Well, yeah, because then there's the big schools with the most. You would get more. Some school would start some type of weird campaign and set up a bot to just click somebody's name 9,000 times.
And some of these trophies are voted on by like coaches and stuff like that. It makes sense that Kyle Pitts won the John Mackey Award for best tight end. The Lou Groza Award was Jose Borregales from Miami, which I know Alabama won a ton of them, but my God. Will Reichard for Alabama did not miss a single kick all year. He was 2 out of 2 from 50+. Like, just give me a break. Give me a break.
Yeah, but y'all didn't kick anything. He didn't make a single high-pressure kick either.
But no, he never had to. And that's
so that's why.
No, I'm with you. Your last crap, will you guys be talking about FCS division football when they play? Yes, because it'll be during the spring, and we're going to discuss some of it. It won't be it
won't be the whole show, but yeah, we'll be covering it.
Matt said it's like the Heisman goes to the most popular player on the most popular team. When an O-lineman wins it, it will matter.
Well, that'll never happen. An O-line will never happen. I do think that we could have
a D-lineman.
A crazy elite. It won't be necessarily a D-lineman. It'll be an edge rusher, which
it's Chase Young.
They don't like to be put in the D-line, but yeah.
Chase Young last year was close to it.
But Ndamukong Suh is the closest D lineman that I've ever seen come and get it, and I actually thought he was the most deserving that year.
Oh yes, no, I do agree with that. Let's see, Casey, what needs to be done to force the committee's hand to change to 8 or 16 teams in the playoff? Let's get this ball moving. Well, there's a lot. First off, the G5 would probably so it depends on how much money ESPN brings to the table in a few years. That's the first thing. If they don't bring enough and they say, all right, well, we're good at 4, then you have to look at suing the Power 5 conferences or suing the playoff. I was just about to say,
you're going to have an antitrust and a monopoly loss if the G5 were to sue, saying there's a substantial amount of money available that's set aside, that's earmarked, and only these schools are allowed to play for that money. That's a violation of financial laws.
Somebody asked me about that on Twitter, and I sent them an article that Barry Trammell wrote for the Oklahomian years ago. And I say years ago, I think it was like 3 years ago that he wrote it. But in 1983, the NCAA was dragging their feet as far as television contracts, right? Like schools wanted to be on TV more. Back in the day, like 60s, 70s, whatever, there was one national college football broadcast each week. That's it. Like looking at television nowadays, I mean, it's absurd. Yeah. But back then it was only one, and there were less channels, there were less whatever. But the way that stuff happened back then is Oklahoma and Georgia sued the NCAA for the right to be able to make their own TV deals. Like, and that was just the schools. Now the conferences handle it now, because if you package all of them together, obviously you're going to get more money than you would if you're just one school. You can ask Notre Dame about that. You can ask BYU, et cetera. But the NCAA drug their feet on the television stuff. They were not ahead of the curve, just like they're not ahead of the curve with the NIL stuff right now, and they're not ahead of the curve with the playoff. Like, they are keeping the money for themselves, not for themselves, but for, and this isn't the NCAA that's doing the playoff, but it's the same situation where getting more teams in, yeah, it might still be the same guys that end up in the championship game, but it still means more for these smaller programs to be able to get into the playoff and at least have the opportunity. Sure. That's where we're going to have to go with this, is there's going to have to be lawsuits. Like, those guys you will never be able to pry a dime away from these big money schools and these big money conferences. Like, you're going to have to fight them in court over it. So, and who knows? I mean, maybe they'll warn it. Maybe something will happen. But as of right now, who knows? Casey says, bro, Kentucky was a quarterback away from being a top 10 team. Great defense, solid O-line, and running backs. That's just facts. Not a hot take. Ridder will be better than Fields. Just facts. Kentucky was not a quarterback away. They did have a good offensive line. It was a good offensive line, not a great offensive line. Like, I love some of the pieces. Those are
not facts. Those are not facts. Those are your opinions.
We saw Kentucky get dominated by Georgia. We saw Kentucky get dominated by Alabama, and it wasn't because of the receivers and all that. That was part of it. But they got dominated in the trenches. Yeah. There's no quarterback that could have fixed that. Yeah. Vanderbilt scored 35 on them because they were able to run the football, and Vandy was able to slow them down running the football. Like, it is what it is. Let's see. Michael Fritz, totally off topic, but happy to see Mond leaving. Are you surprised by that? I think they're happy with the guys that they've got behind Kellen Mond.
Well, I'm pretty sure, Jimbo's been recruiting that place pretty well. I mean, I would be shocked if he doesn't have, quarterbacks behind him. Mond had a really good career. Was it great? No. But he was, has a really good career at A&M. A&M fans, they should be nicer to him. Was he elite? No. But I think he played the best. I think he gave everything he had to that school.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. Let's see. Your last crap said, don't be surprised if Mond is Mr. Irrelevant. No, he'll get drafted before that.
Oh, I don't know. But because I was thinking that he could be one of those undrafted guys. Yeah, Mr. Irrelevant wouldn't surprise me.
Casey said Kentucky quit against Bama. They didn't show up against Vandy. You guys just don't see it.
It just depends on whatever Casey's narrative is. Whatever story he wants to spin, it's the way he's going to twist everything too.
I love Casey to death, but man, this is some far out there QAnon stuff going on in college football. Whoo, boy. McKinnon said they're all afraid of letting one of the small schools in and getting upset like what you see in March Madness. It'll be some type of validation that the Power 5 does not want to see. Yes, because then it's not just – like, then you'll have more Gonzagas, right?
But here's the problem. Even if it's the 4 seed, okay? So we all agreed that Notre Dame was a pretty far step behind everyone else, which I don't agree with that, but that's fine. Yeah. That's the argument. Even if it's the 4 seed ever gets upset by a G5 school, not that I think they would ever allow a 5 seed to be a G5 school, but they won't. It's a black eye on the sport. It's an indictment on who they allow in their structures. He's exactly right. Yeah. He's exactly right.
Casey said, I'm telling you, watch the first quarter against Bama. Tell me they didn't quit after. Casey, I watched that entire game.
Let's go on with the show.
Let's see. Next one. Hey, let's talk about Desmond Ridder. I know that this is a favorite topic of Casey's, but I do want to talk about the fact that he is coming back to school. He was a senior this season. But, of course, he has that extra year of eligibility. He is coming back, and almost that entire team remains intact. Now, the defense is going to lose a couple of key pieces, but they have recruited well enough under Luke Fickell to be able to replace those guys. I have got to tell you, I am really excited about watching Cincinnati next year. Now, Luke Fickell didn't come out and be like, yeah, we're going to be really good and all that kind of stuff. He just said, look, we've got the kind of team that could,
he says what he's supposed potential. To say. He's saying the things he's supposed to say.
They have Indiana and Notre Dame on the schedule next year.
I was just about to say, we need to make sure they got a couple of big boys, not just Vanderbilt and Kansas. Okay, they're gonna need some skins to hang on the wall. All right, they're gonna need some deer heads.
Indiana with Michael Penix and Notre Dame. next year. Those are two big-time matchups that they do have a shot in.
Yes.
I think they can win those games.
Notre Dame's going to have a lot of turnover. They're going to have a turnover at the most important position.
This is true. Now, of course, Jack Cohn, we never talked about that. Jack Cohn, the former Wisconsin quarterback that got hurt before the season, he has transferred to Notre Dame.
That's fine.
So we'll see if he's going to play for them. He was okay. He was efficient. We'll say that. He was efficient as Wisconsin's quarterback last year. This year, I think they obviously went through some stuff. But either way, Cincy, you get Desmond Ridder back, and all of a sudden, they got a chance to run it back.
I know we're counting chickens away, but I mean, it's a whole year away, and a million things can happen. If they can run that table and they're left out, we need – I mean, at that point in time, if you're Cincinnati, then you do sue.
Yeah.
Then you get the lawyers, you get the American behind you get the Sun Belt behind you. You see if all these G5 schools can come together and help you in a lawsuit, and you say this has got to stop.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Andrew jumps in. Feel like Ridder could really boost himself up to early to mid first rounder with another great season. Great decision by him. Yes, this year was slammed with quarterback prospects.
We're gonna have 7 quarterbacks, I believe, go in the first round,
or at least close to it. Because there's going to be 7 drafted early.
I think there's 7 drafted in day 1. I really do.
I
really think too many teams need a quarterback.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
And they have seen that you can win a Super Bowl by getting a quarterback
or with a young quarterback on a rookie contract. The most valuable thing in the NFL right now is a good quarterback on a rookie contract.
100%.
That's more valuable than anything else on your team. Is a really good quarterback on its rookie deal.
Yes.
So, yeah. And if you draft them in the first round instead of the second round, so teams will move up to get those guys, you get a 5th year of control of that guy. That's crazy important.
McKinnon said, yeah, but if Cincinnati wins against Notre Dame, it'll be screams from the P5 saying, oh, it was a down year, they got caught off guard, et cetera. Well, yeah,
they're gonna spin this thing to make it bad. If they run they're gonna sell it all they can to make it to downplay it all. If Notre Dame loses that game, Notre Dame won't get a call the rest of the year.
Yep.
Every game they play, they'll try to make them finish 6-6.
Yeah, Notre Dame's schedule next year is brutal.
But hang on, Gary. They do this every year.
Oh, I know.
And nobody gives them credit for it. Every year they play one of the toughest schedules in the country.
Let me read it off.
What, 2 or 3 years ago, they played, I think, 7 or 8 games. Hell, they only played 12 games total. They played 7 or 8 of them, more away games than home games, and they played all of them in the state of California.
Oh,
but that's how they recruit.
Hold on, check this out. This is next year's schedule. They open at Florida State, which, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then Toledo, Purdue, against Wisconsin in Soldier Field in Chicago.
Oh, my God.
The Cincinnati Bearcats, of course, the week after Wisconsin and the week before.
Have to find a ticket to that game.
And then after Cincinnati, they play at Virginia Tech. They've got an off week. Then they play USC, North Carolina, Navy, at Virginia, Georgia Tech, and at Stanford.
Yeah. Ooh. So, hang on. That Cincinnati game, that's at Notre Dame, right?
Yes. But it's the week after Wisconsin and the week before they go to Lane Stadium in Blacksburg.
Do we have dates on that? Or just weeks 1, 2?
Nope, Saturday, October 2nd.
That's which one is that?
That's the Cincinnati game. Saturday, September 25th is against Wisconsin in Chicago.
Okay. All right. I might have to
go to Chicago.
I might have to find a way to break into that game.
Yeah, I can get with you.
Those are 2 teams I've been wanting to go see in person for a long time.
Casey said Desmond Ridder gets no respect. He would have gone to the NFL this year if the media didn't completely ignore him. It's not the media. It's not the media, man.
No,
there's just 7 quarterbacks that are really, really, really good, and he's kind of shut out of that. Now, he could have been drafted for sure.
He would have been drafted, no doubt.
Yeah. But I don't know
that at the combine he would have put it up. But why go this year when you can go next year? And there might be a slew of quarterbacks that come out next year, but we don't know any of them's name. So far, we're going into next year knowing we know Rattler and we know Ridder. That's the list right now. That what we know is going to be that elite top echelon guy.
Yep, and Sam
everybody
Howell
else is going to have to come from nowhere.
Yeah, Sam Howell from North Carolina will be there as well.
I think both of those other 2 guys are head and shoulders better than Sam Howell right now on what the scouts have looked at and seen.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. McKinnon, just like when Memphis beat Ole Miss the same year Ole Miss beat Bama, not saying Memphis was deserving of the playoff, but everybody just threw it out. Well, Memphis also lost like 3 of their last 4, so like that didn't help things. But Memphis started out ranked number 8, who knows? Notre Dame back 7 to 9 years ago was getting railed for playing cupcakes because they were bad and no one wanted to play them. That was a little while ago, but that was the teams they do
a pretty good job getting guys to play them now. So they haven't had a problem in about 10 years. The last 10 years they play basically year in, year out. They play a pretty tough schedule.
Yes, this is true. Last couple of topics that I want to hit on, and we'll start with Auburn. McKinnon and I texted back and forth yesterday about Brian Harsin. Well, they hired Mike Bobo as their new offensive coordinator. He was the interim coach for South Carolina and the offensive coordinator for South Carolina under Will Muschamp this season before Muschamp got fired. He was the head coach at Colorado State before that for 5 seasons, and before that, he was the offensive coordinator at Georgia under Mark Richt. That one is the one that does not make a whole lot of sense to me. On the other side,
which one? I'm sorry,
the Mike Bobo one. The other hire is the defensive coordinator. That is Derek Mason. Now,
I was hoping he was going to hit the Baton Rouge.
I think a lot of people wanted him to be their DC.
Now, I would tell you this. We got Cincinnati's defensive coordinator. I think LSU's this year. I know we're talking about Auburn now. Sorry, I'm being a little
you're good.
Controlling here. I think LSU had to save some money.
It does seem
I think they were told you can change all these guys out, but we're not doing any $2 million contracts. You better go get some unproven guys with a lot of upside. And
yes. I do think that. I think that's what they did for offensive coordinator. I think that's what they are going to do with defensive coordinator. I mean, it makes sense because they've done this once under Orgeron before Pelini, and that was when they brought in Matt Canada, and that didn't work, and they ended up having to pay a huge buyout on him. Same thing happened with Pelini. They brought him in for a 3-year guaranteed deal where he was being paid more than $2 million a year, and they fired him after the first season. Like, you can't keep doing that and failing on some of these hires. Instead,
I think the DC is good. I mean, he learned under Luke Fickell and he's put that thing together, and he's built Cincinnati into what they were.
Oh, you got that right. Is that a done deal? Has that been announced?
Yeah, I think that guy's it. I think that is done.
I haven't seen it, but of course I have no.
Go ahead, keep talking about Auburn. I'll go on. I didn't know the Mike Bobo deal was done, and that's why I was curious about their OC. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't dislike Bobo, but I don't think. But I mean,
Bobo
where he was at South Carolina, it's kind of the quality of job I would think that he would be.
Yes, the Bobo thing. Like, the reason it doesn't make sense to me is how openly he talked last season about wanting to huddle and wanting to slow things down and all that kind of stuff. That's not what wins football games anymore. That's not what Brian Harsin does. Like, they're so now. The funny part about it is that Bobo was rumored to be the offensive coordinator for Kevin Steele if Kevin Steele's coup actually worked, right? So where you thought that Auburn was coming in and the AD is the adult in the room and they're going to let them make their own hires and da-da-da-da-da, all that kind of stuff, they never. Like, they're still not gone. There's still rats in that kitchen, you know? So it feels like this was more of a booster hire because he is one of those SEC lifer kind of guys, right? Mike Bobo's been around the SEC forever. He played quarterback at Georgia. He was an offensive coordinator forever at Georgia. Then he goes over to South Carolina with a Georgia guy. And now the other side of this is he did coach against Brian Harsin when he was at Colorado State, and he did put up like 52 in one of those games, and they were able to score on Boise even though he lost to him every single time. It could just be that Harsin really appreciated like his schemes. But the fact that it was the same guy that was rumored to be the OC under Kevin Steele kind of makes you a little suspicious. The Derek Mason one is a wonderful hire. Derek Mason is a fantastic defensive coordinator.
I think he got priced out of the LSU gig because of all the money they've spent with Pelini. So Marcus Freeman, I couldn't think of the guy's name. Marcus Freeman, it has not been official yet, but he flew down like 2 days ago to Baton Rouge, and he hasn't left yet.
Yeah, he's rumored to be the dude, and it would surprise me if he's not because he's.
I think they're probably just working out contract now. If he still hasn't left Baton Rouge, you don't stay and hang out in Baton Rouge for 3 days because there ain't a whole hell of a lot to do in Baton Rouge.
This is true. It's not far from New Orleans, but You know.
Yeah, but no, I don't. Anyway,
I'm with you. I'm with you. And
I
finally,
don't think he's a turn it up in New Orleans kind of guy. Maybe he is. I don't know.
who knows? If he is, I think he'll fit well. You know,
but I will like that hire. I've kind of mentally already chalked it up, and so I'm going to be disappointed now if it doesn't happen.
Yes. Let's see. So the last thing that I want to talk about, Ryan Walters, former Missouri defensive coordinator, and by former was just the defensive coordinator this year for Eli Drinkwitz.
Yep.
I didn't think Missouri was awful on defense, considering what they had coming back after the year prior. He is now the new defensive coordinator at Illinois under Bret Bielema. Tell me so there's only two things that I could see, because this is a pretty lateral move, and I doubt that there is more money involved for him at Illinois than there would be at Missouri, although maybe I'm wrong about that. But either way, I think that there's two reasons why he would leave Missouri. Either one, he did not get along with the head coach, or two, the head coach did not think he was doing a good job and told him to find something else. That's what I feel like.
Well, there's a third option. Missouri is working really hard to up their facilities and put more emphasis on their football program. I think Illinois has made football more of a priority than Missouri has. And if you think he saw the offenses in kind of a weird down COVID year of the SEC, and he looks up at the Big Ten and thinks, well, life is a lot longer up there. Nobody's hanging 50 on you up there unless you rotate in to play Ohio State.
That is true.
Right? And so defensive coordinators keep their jobs just substantially longer. And then also, we don't know that he doesn't have any time. I mean, I would need to go through his resume and see where he's been. If you got a coaching job somewhere and I was already coaching somewhere else and you called me, I'm leaving where I'm at. Like, we don't know that these people don't have a relationship already.
That's true.
And so that's always, if I don't know that it's always I'm not pleased with you thing. I think Drinkwitz should have been insanely pleased with everything that happened with Missouri football this year, because they overachieved at an incredible level. And I would be really proud of everything that happened there. If I was on that staff at any position, this could be a situation though, where the DC looked around and said, this is the ceiling though. I've seen this conference. I know what happens here. And this is the ceiling.
Oh no,
the floor.
100%. 100%.
And that's the thing. Yes, I do believe it's a lateral move. What you said in a scenario could be true. There could also be a lot more things to that, because once again, I'd want to see the money, and I want to see the money difference. But I don't know. I would just.
There's a lot more.
I gotta assume there's a Bret. I'll tell you this: I don't know anything about Eli Drinkwitz. I don't know anything about that man. I feel like I know a lot about Bret. I wouldn't mind working for Bret.
That's a very valid point. That's a very valid point.
That's from what I see at a distance. That's all.
All right, so we're gonna run through the comments before we get out of here. First off, Casey said Kentucky versus Georgia was 14-3. He said Grayson McCall wins that game, and Georgia is a top 10 team, right? Don't forget, Kentucky also lost to Missouri 20-10. So, if we're talking about that,
but if they had Grayson McCall, they'd have won that game 50-20. So I don't know what you're talking about, Gary.
I guess.
Right?
I don't know. We're
just making stuff up now.
I so want Casey to see reality, because Grayson McCall is great in the offense that Jamie Chadwell runs. They don't run that at Kentucky. So you must, Gary. The only advice I know how to give somebody like this is you can only face reality on reality's terms. That's it. That's it. You can't make reality what you want it. You have to accept it for what it is. Kip Falbo said, so when is the Pac-12 going to fire Larry Scott? At this point, I have no idea, but I will tell you this. Whenever it happens, it happened about 2 years too late. Maybe longer. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just ridiculous. McKinnon, our resident Auburn fan, what pisses me off is the boosters that irritated Hugh Freeze by wanting to keep Steele, but now Steele's gone, so what the hell? Those boosters need some kicks in the nuts. Well, I mean, they're still giving money to the university. So, I mean, they still kind of run the football program. What are we going to do? Anthony, by the way, jumps in. It's reported that Harbaugh has no buyout.
I'm going to bet that was part of his new deal.
Yeah.
I'm going to bet if you want me to take this thing and cut it in half, I'm willing to do that. But I don't want to buy out.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, if you're the university, you just save $4 million a year. So what is the buyout anyway?
Yeah, it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
If somebody was to hire him away in 2 years from now, you've already saved $8 million in just the regular contract. It's okay. It's fine.
Yeah, it was a concession on one side to have the other side more favorable.
That's right.
That's 100%
right. I think his contract might be the perfect contract for big boy college football. I really do. And your Nick Sabans, your Dabo Swinney's, they'll never agree to that. But I do think it's the perfect contract. I'd be willing to pay a coach $20 million a year, but it's all got to be incentive laden.
Yeah. Anthony said, does that mean that he's done next season? It depends on what he does. If they have another season like they did this year, maybe.
No, maybe. That doesn't mean, hang on. Oh, buyout means that's what another team has to pay them to fire him or for him to leave and break the contract. I guarantee
there's still a buyout.
If they fire him, he is owed $4 million times 5 years.
I'd be willing to bet that. I'd certainly be willing to bet
that doesn't mean I can fire you and buy you out. That is, what is the price another team has to pay the university to break the contract?
Finally, last one from Anthony, and we'll get out of here after this one. He said, do you think Pat Fitzgerald jumped ship with all the changes at Northwestern?
Man, I hope not, but if he does, Northwestern's going to be in a world of hurt.
So if he does, that is a very interesting scenario because obviously, like, the AD is now the new commissioner of the ACC. His longtime defensive coordinator just retired, and they just hired a new offensive coordinator, so he is surrounded by people that he doesn't really know. So if he were ever going to do it, this feels like the time to do it. However, this kind of feels like Fitzgerald is going to be a lifer at Northwestern, and it would be the first time that we have seen it in forever.
Now, I don't think he's leaving for another job in college.
I think the NFL. Yeah.
For the NFL, but the kicker is the one NFL job I think he wants isn't coming open this year.
Yeah, it appears that the Bears are going to stick with Nagy, and
well, I mean, yeah, if they make the playoffs, it's hard to. Only one team that I can remember in my life ever had the balls to fire a coach after the playoffs, and that's our Tennessee Titans, and it was 100% the right move.
Yes, Mike Mularkey did not belong as the head coach there,
and Vrabel has been just the absolute godsend that you could ask for a football coach.
You are correct.
He's not perfect, but I'll take all his flaws.
So 100%.
That's the problem is he going to take the Lions job? Would he take the Texans job? Hell no. Now maybe he'd take the Lions job. I don't know. Hey, I don't know what makes Fitzgerald tick.
Anthony jumps in, by the way. He said Bears will fire everyone if they lose on Sunday. It's out there.
Oh,
so apparently
shit.
It's been reported.
Now, if that happens, I 100% think, because I listen to Tony Kornheiser's show. All right. That's my favorite podcast that I listen to. Tony has his best friend, Mike Wilbon, every Monday on the show. And Wilbon has made it clear Pat Fitzgerald grew up in Chicago. He loved the Bears far before he ever fell in love with Northwestern. Yeah. Far before he ever chose to. That's something that happened as a child. And I've talked about this with you. Your love from your youth, that's a different kind of love. When you fall in love with something at 4, 5, 6 years old and you love it your entire life, there's nothing that can ever happen to break that bond.
No, you're right about that. You were right about that. Casey, by the way, last one, he jumps in. I was in Grassland when I said Bears make the playoffs too. Casey, you also said the Eagles were making the playoffs. So,
yeah, he forgets if you throw enough crazy shit out there, we live in a world where crazy shit happens, then some of your stuff is going to be right. But man, we don't bring up all the shit you got wrong, and Casey, that's okay. That's not our for us to do. But I'm just telling you.
This is the Kentucky thing's a little far out there. Well,
here's the problem. It's easy to say that because we can never go back. We can't replay last year with McCall.
Yeah.
We just can't do it. So
no, you're right. So it's definitely not a fact.
He's always right. And because Ridder isn't going into the draft, We'll never know if Ridder's going to get drafted before Fields. He's going to live in perpetual rightness the rest of his life on those calls because we don't know.
And hey, when you can do that, when you live in perpetual rightness in your own mind, that makes you a much more confident person. And I'm all for it. It's
a little delusional, though.
Hey, you know what? Maybe this world needs a little more delusion. Maybe.
I'm gonna grossly disagree with you on that. Holy shit!
It's Friday afternoon.
We need to face reality on reality's terms, Gary.
maybe you're right. I don't know what's right in this world anymore anyway. So
I don't either. But I'm just telling you, we can't live in delusional land.
You're probably right. All right, Casey, we love you. We appreciate you. Everybody else that jumped in today, we appreciate you guys as well. You have been fantastic, of course, driving the conversation. A lot of these questions we would not have thought to even ask, so we're glad that you did. And we will continue on through the weekend, of course. Damian jumps in. Nagy and Pace are not leaving Chicago no matter what happens. Who knows at this point?
I think Damian's more right. I don't think Chicago has the stones to fire a coach that made the playoffs. I just don't think they do.
They might be right. All right, let's go ahead and dive out of here. Of course, winningcureseverything.com is the website. You can find everywhere that you need to be subscribed over there. If you would, subscribe to the podcast. Leave a nice 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. But we are on all of your other podcast platforms. And, of course, sbrpicks.com/NCAAF for your college football gambling content. SBR Picks on YouTube is the thing that you're search for. So go find that over there. Our national championship preview is up. And, by the way, we've got a championship game on Monday, and we will be here on Monday to discuss that along with everything else that happens over Wild Card Weekend. We hope you all have great weekends. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And we will see you again next week. Thanks for checking out Winning Cures Everything. If you want to keep up with us, hit subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Visit the website at winningcureseverything.com, or you can like us on Facebook or follow us at Winning Cures, at Gary WCE, or at Chris B. Giannini on Twitter. Share out the show, leave a nice review, and